Google just made a ton of AI announcements at the Google I/O developer event last week, and there were a ton of updates that were announced and rolled out. We're going to deep dive into a few of kind of what we see as the most important ones, but I'm going to kind of quickly run down some of the notable announcements here to give you a sense of exactly what caliber of AI updates we're talking about here. So, first up, Gemini 1.5 Pro is soon going to be infused into all Google Workspace apps. So, it is going to function as a general purpose assistant that can get any info or docs you need across Drive, summarize emails, work across Docs, Sheets, Slides, Drive, and Gmail to help you do a range of things and make you more productive. Now, Google also announced that Gemini 1.5 Pro, which is a 1 million token context model, is now going to actually be available to Gemini Advanced users. So that 1 million token context is just utterly massive. It just blows the other models out of the water. And it means you can upload literally a 1,500 page PDF to it if you want and use that in concert with the model. Now, they also mentioned that Gemini 1.5 Pro is getting expanded as well to a whopping 2 million tokens. Now, we don't know when that expanded context version of the model is going to be available to all of us, but CEO Sundar Pichai did say, quote, "And this represents the next step on our journey towards the ultimate goal of infinite context." So functionally no limit to the amount of information you could be using with Google's models. Now, Google also previewed something it is calling Project Astra, which is an experimental multimodal AI assistant that can understand everything it sees through your device's camera. So it means it can go see the world around you, answer questions about it, remember where things are in your world as you're using your phone to show it your environment, and then perform actions for you based on what it sees. Now, Google also announced something called Gems, which is a custom chatbot creator. This is basically their answer to OpenAI's GPTs, where you can create a custom version of Gemini for a specific task. We also got word of Veo, which is Google's answer to OpenAI's Sora. Veo is a model that generates 1080p video based on text, image, and video prompts. And just in case there wasn't enough updates, Google Search is getting its first major overhaul in literally decades. So Google is rolling out what it's calling AI overviews. Now, these used to be called Search Generative Experience. You may have actually already used it, seen it if you've had it enabled in your Google account, but it is now rolling out to everyone in the US this week. So these are those AI generated and summarized search results that appear before all the traditional links at the top of a page. Now, ton of other updates as well. There were some that dealt with a range of new Gemini capabilities for engaging with your photos, planning trips, making your Android phone smarter. Got the announcement of a new, smaller, and faster Gemini 1.5 model called Flash. And also Gemini Nano is getting added right into Google Chrome. So, Paul, there's a lot going on here, but in your mind, kind of which ones of these announcements jumped out to you the most?
Yeah, so this was Tuesday morning, well, Tuesday afternoon, I guess. So I was actually in Columbus Tuesday morning doing a fireside chat keynote at the Angel Capital Association. So my day started talking to like investors and fund managers and things like that. And then I'm driving back from Columbus to Cleveland right as this was about to start. So I'm listening to this live stream in my car. I've got it playing through my phone as I'm driving. And it just so happens that it's about a 2-hour drive, and it was about a 2-hour live stream of this portion of it. There was a number of times where I just like wanted to stop and be like, wait, what? Like, how? What did they just show? Because I'm obviously not really watching it. My full self-driving Tesla isn't really full self-driving, therefore you can't actually like watch the whole thing. So I did like kind of glance down every once in a while, just like, I don't even understand what they just explained. Like, how are they doing that? So there was a lot. I will say there was a lot of announcements, not many releases. So all the stuff Mike's talking about there's very little of it that you can go experiment with right now. So let's just be clear on this was a bunch of stuff that's coming. Some it sounds maybe in a few weeks. Some we have no idea, like probably Project Astra. We don't know when it's going to be out. Um, so as I was laying in bed last night trying to prep for this, I tried to categorize this as like things I'm most excited about, things I'm most unsure about, and things with big potential. And then I also had a category of things that could end up being really important that we're
Mm,
probably glossing over right now. So I'll run through these real quick. Things I'm most excited about: 100% Gmail search actually being good. So this has always been one of the more perplexing things in my professional life is how useless Gmail search and Google Drive search are. Like just painfully bad search functions. And yet this is the greatest search company on earth. So anything they do to make Gmail search really functional is amazing. It seems like they're actually going to go a step further than that and bring new capabilities into it that I would have never even thought of, obviously. So they gave some examples of being able to curate receipts, for example, like to go in and search for receipts, and then not only that, to train it on tasks related to those receipts.
mm,
So they're saying you're going to basically be able to like have it do something and then have it like learn that function where they're starting to kind of show the capabilities around the agents in a way. Then they gave another example that I absolutely loved, which was your kid's school emails you all the time, which 100% they do. I mean, I get like 3 emails a day from my kid's school, and sometimes you just don't look at them for a few days. And so they said you can go in and give it an email address and say summarize all the recent emails from kid's school email address, basically. And it like pops up all the key things that you need to know. I was like, man, that's a really valuable function, especially in business. It's like, I've been out for 10 days, summarize everything that Mike sent to me over the last 10 days, like highlight the key things for me. So to make Gmail not just a search, but to actually make it like a functional assistant is awesome. Um, I'm extremely excited about anything they do to make Gemini more valuable within Google Workspace. We are Google Workspace customers. We have doc sheets, um, whatever they're what's the slides, the PowerPoint version. So we use all of that. And so the idea of having that assistant in the side panel that is connected to everything would be awesome. Now, their blog post is a little misleading because it starts off with starting today, Gemini and side panel is available for Google Docs, Sheets, Drive, Slides, everything. Then when you get down to the bottom, it says actually Gemini and Workspace side panel is now available for Workspace Labs and Gemini for Workspace Alpha users. So it will be available next month on desktop for businesses and consumers through Gemini for Workspace add-ons and the Google One AI Premium plan. So I guess that is something to look forward to sometime in the next month. If you are using Google Workspace apps, you should be able to have that Gemini support. Then I saw something interesting that wasn't in their announcements, that I saw at least. But when I was looking at their blog post announcing the Gemini Workspace updates, and we'll put a link to the show notes, if you go to it, there is a AI summary at the top. There's a button that says Read AI Generated Summary. So it's using Gemini to automatically summarize the blog post. And then when you click it, it gives you the general summary that looks like the AI overviews almost in search. But then you can also click bullet point version. So I can like have the style and bullet point. It also has the option to listen to the article, which I assume is also all AI generated. So as a brand, as a publisher, this is really fascinating to me. Like I would love to have that capability. Like I would put that on our blog today if we could. So that was kind of cool. All right, so that was the stuff I was kind of excited about. The thing I'm unsure about is the AI overviews in search, and maybe Mike will come back and talk about that one for a minute.
mm,
They talked about the AI teammate, this idea of like, again, they're not calling it agents as much, but this idea of having that teammate that's always with you and things like that. I like that idea. I think that's something to build on there. The big potential ones, certainly Project Astra. I think they debuted part of that in December when they got sort of grilled for maybe showing some capabilities that weren't actually available today or weren't done in like single shots and things like that. So they talked about that being available later this year through the Gemini Live. And Hassabis said they were testing several prototype smart glasses because there was one example where they actually panned past some smart glasses. And then Sergey Brin, one of the co-founders of Google, was at the event, and one of the reporters actually said, "Hey, Sergey, this is seems like the Google Glasses thing from 10 years ago. Like, now is the time. And he said something like they had the right form factor. They were just early, basically. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we don't hear something related to the Google Glasses being resurrected at some point here. And then in the things that could end up being really important category, you mentioned Gemini 1.5 Flash, which is kind of that smaller, faster model. The Trillium TPUs, so they introduced new versions of their chips, basically their answer to GPUs. Now they use both their own tensor processing units, TPUs, and GPUs in their AI. But this, I think they said, was like 4.5 times more efficient, maybe, than the current generation. You mentioned the 1 million tokens. They also said they're going to 2 million tokens, which is 2 hours of video, 22 hours of audio, 1.4 million words. Like, it's a massive amount. But the infinite context that you mentioned, Sundar said, that was one where I like ears perked up as soon as I heard. That was the first time I've heard them talk about like infinite context, which basically means memory, like the ability for these things to not forget and to very accurately find things within it. Along those lines, they did release a report that I think is worth, we're not going to spend a lot of time on it today, but I think this might be worth coming back to. So it's called Gemini 1.5, Unlocking Multimodal Understanding Across Millions of Tokens of Context. It's a 153-page report. So I did not read the whole thing, but I want to read a quick excerpt here because I think this kind of connects why the faster model matters to us as business professionals or as developers. So in the introduction, it says, in this report, we introduced Gemini 1.5 family of models representing the next generation of highly compute-efficient multimodal models capable of recalling and reasoning over fine-grained information from millions of tokens of context. Okay, so I'll pause there for a second. A couple big words in there that we want to just make sure everybody like understands. So represent the next generation of highly compute efficient means they don't need as many chips to power this, maybe in training or inference when they actually output something, because they've made the chips themselves more efficient. So that efficiency they unlock with the Trillium chips actually enables them to build these kind of faster models. And then the multimodal, meaning text, image, video, audio. And then the idea that it's recall and reasoning over fine-grained information from millions of tokens, meaning not only can you give it 2 million tokens or 1.4 million words, it's actually exceptionally good at finding very specific kind of needle in the haystack stuff within that and recalling things very accurately over that. So the issues with these models for the last couple of years was, one, they didn't have very much context. So, I think Claude right now is 200,000 tokens, which is about 160,000 words or so. But that's fine. It actually needs to accurately be able to search that context, though. And that's what we've kind of been missing, is the size of the context and then the quality of the ability to recall things and find things within that context. So they're solving for both of those things here. Family includes 1.5 Pro, which you talked on, and 1.5 Flash. But then the part I bold-faced, it says, studying the limits of Gemini 1.5's long context ability, we find continued improvement in its next token prediction and near perfect retrieval, greater than 99% accuracy, meaning when you look for something in that context, it's finding it. And it says up to at least 10 million tokens. So they're going to release 2 million, but their research is already ahead of this, saying this thing is staying accurate up to at least 10 million tokens, which I don't even know what the use cases are for that in business. I mean, that's basically your entire knowledge base as a company. And then they compare it to Claude, which is 200,000, GPT-4 Turbo, which is 128,000. And then finally, we highlight real-world use cases such as Gemini 1.5 collaborating with professions on completing their tasks, achieving 26 to 75% time savings across 10 different job categories. So they actually went in and had professionals craft like these advanced prompts, and then they gauged how much time would be saved using these prompts with some examples within this. So pretty cool stuff. Again, not all things we're going to see today that are going to affect our jobs tomorrow, but it definitely hints at where it's going. One final note here. Where do you get all this stuff was the question I had. So you can go to labs.google.com, and that's where a lot of this is going to be previewed. So you can sign up to join waitlist. So they have Video FX, which I think is the VO thing. They have image FX, music FX. They have notebook LM. So this is kind of where they test these things. So if you've never been to labs.google.com, go there, check it out. Um, and there's some good information there. And then maybe we'll put a pin in this one and come back to this maybe on the next episode, Mike. But on May 17th, they introduced their frontier safety framework. So DeepMind released a paper or a post and a report that basically said, okay, we're now studying, or we're going to start sharing what we've been studying about the high risk. So on episode 94, we talked about Anthropic's responsible scaling policy. This is kind of along the same lines of Google's frontier safety framework, where they try and project risks as the models get smarter and then prepare for those. So it was a lot, man. I don't know. Was there anything
Absolutely.
you were most excited about? Like that was different from mine, the Gmails and the search
No,
workspace?
nothing different. Just to emphasize again, the longer context windows and the ability to retrieve that information accurately, I think is extremely impactful. And one of those things that we've talked about a ton of times on this show is like figuring out where the future is going and planning for that versus, responding to the current capabilities. I think context is an obvious example of that for me.
Yeah, and I think this again is probably more of, if you're not in IT, on the data side, the more technical side of this stuff, and you're like Mike and I, more business professionals trying to figure this stuff out and find use cases and solve problems more intelligently, the context window becomes really, really important, because the way that we're currently solving for this stuff is going to change, and so I don't know, like a practical example, I'll think out loud here for a second, Mike. So if Gemini has access to our entire Google Drive, which has everything we've ever created as a company, like all of our information is in there, every document, everything. If it has the ability to recall and find anything with a simple prompt within that accurately, then all of a sudden, like when I go to use Gemini to help me, say, draft a proposal or craft a reply to something or build a presentation, it already knows all of that. Like it can have millions of tokens of context. And so everything in that knowledge base is already there. I don't have to, give it 15 examples. I can literally just say, here's the folder on the drive. Like, go, this is where everything is already. Or
Yeah.
go find the folder on the drive. Great. All the documents in there is what you're going to need to help me in this next project we're doing together. So I think that in the next, this is probably a near term horizon, like 12 to 18 months, it's going to start to become very commonplace where people are going to just have either Microsoft, Amazon AWS, or Google with Gemini. They're just going to have these models connected to their knowledge bases, and this context window, as it keeps getting bigger, is going to enable this like instant recall of anything that's ever happened. And if it's connected to your Gmail, your Docs, your Sheets, all of it is going to start to just be literally the Gemini modules on the side, and I can be in Gmail, Calendar, Docs, doesn't matter.
Mm.
I can literally say like, hey, moment's notice, I'm thinking about the sales data for our Maycon event last year. Where were we at 17 weeks out from that event? It's gonna know I'm talking about something in Sheets. It's gonna go into Sheets. It's gonna run a pivot table. It's gonna build the thing, and it's gonna spit back to me 17 weeks out. You'd sold X amount of tickets. Great. What are you projecting our current sales trend to be at? And it's gonna do it while I'm sitting in my calendar. Like I'm not gonna
Mm.
have to go find it. And that's awesome. Like that's the potential of where this goes in the very near term, because it has almost this infinite context where it can understand the connections between all of these things, and you can just talk to your data.
So before we move on to the next topic, I just kind of wanted to get your kind of first draft thoughts on, with all these announcements, I think it's not an understatement to say the SEO world is freaking out, because I've seen a ton of commentary online where a lot of people are starting to kind of sound some alarm bells here, because AI overviews in particular are kind of causing a lot of worry that we could be starting to see search change in a way that severely reduces the amount of traffic to websites and publishers due to AI summarized results. So how concerned are you about this after this announcement specifically that they're moving to this format?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are rightfully concerned about this. We've talked about this, numerous times on the show, that there's going to be an impact to organic search. That as these AI overviews start becoming a prominent part of what's going on, you're going to see a reduction in search traffic coming from it. Um, what is the play? How do we address that? We just don't know, and Google's not sharing much data yet. So Sundar did say on stage that they're seeing like high levels of engagement with these AI overviews, the search generative experience, as it was known. Um, they didn't really say what does that mean though, because
Mm,
these things aren't consistent. Like if you go in right now, you may see AI overviews for a search you conduct, or you may see the traditional blue links. So it's part. I think they're just managing how often it's showing. I think there's just a lot of experimentation on their end going. It seems to be connected to the type of search you perform. Um, I found them honestly quite valuable. Like
mm,
I like the AI overviews. Will I click on fewer links? I don't know. Like I've never sat down and said like am I not going to these links? Um, but I do think it's going to impact people. So yesterday I was doing a keynote for a group of publishers, like magazine publishers, and this was obviously a key topic for them. Is like what is the impact going to be on media companies and publishers as we move forward? So I think that there's a lot to be determined about where this goes and the true impact it has, but I think that brands need to prepare for a drop in organic traffic. And I think you need to go like I don't remember if I talked about this on this episode last week, um, or previous episode, but I talked about Mike our brand, like our sort of search neutral strategy to our
mm,
content. So we knew that this drop was coming for the last year and a half, and so we have diversified the distribution of our content. So we record this podcast, it goes on podcast networks, it goes on YouTube, it gets cut up into, 10 different videos on YouTube, it goes onto TikTok with shorts, it goes onto Instagram. Like we've kind of built this out. Plus we focus on building subscribers to our newsletter. So we have 75,000 or so subscribers to the newsletter. So if organic traffic stopped today to our site, which it's not, we've actually seen an uptake in organic traffic so far for us. But if it were to stop today, it wouldn't have a measurable impact on our brand. Like we have basically diversified out to where our audiences are, and that enables us to kind of remain strong. So I would encourage people to really think about kind of an organic search neutral strategy where worst case scenario, it's just gone. It's not going to happen like that for most companies. It'll be kind of more of a gradual decline, and then it may level off. Some may actually see an increase, but you should plan for the fact that maybe your search traffic drops in a significant way, and don't wait for that to happen before you start diversifying the strategy, basically. I don't know, Mike, you're our chief content officer. Like any other thoughts on that? I mean, that's kind of been our approach, right? Is just like make sure we're getting content in all the different channels so we're not
yeah.
dependent upon it.
Yeah, absolutely. Diversification and also just nothing can compare to owning your own audience. So I think we've, been very fortunate and strategic in that over the years. But yeah, those are two things that unfortunately, if you haven't started doing those things yet, that's a bit of an uphill climb, but there's no better day to start than today, I would say.